Jerusalem smelled like smoke and lamb's blood that week. The whole city had swollen with pilgrims, tens of thousands of them, pressing through the narrow stone streets, carrying their animals to the temple, calling to one another in Aramaic and Greek and the rough dialects of the northern hills. Passover was coming, the feast of liberation, the remembrance of a night long ago when death had passed over a people and left them standing, blinking in the dark, about to walk out of everything they had ever known. Jesus had arrived on a donkey, to the sound of palms and shouting. But that was just a few days ago, and already the air had changed. The religious leaders, the chief priests, the scribes, the men who kept the careful machinery of the temple running, they wanted him gone. They had always found his teaching dangerous, his popularity infuriating. Now they were making plans. Quiet ones. The kind that happened in back rooms, after dark. Jesus knew. He had known for a while. The way a man who has walked a long road knows when he is nearing the end of it. Not with dread exactly, but with a kind of deep, aching clarity. He had 12 men with him. Men he had chosen. Men he had fed and taught and walked with for 3 years. Men who still didn't fully understand what was coming. And on the Thursday before Passover, he had one more meal to share with them. One last evening of bread and wine and the sound of his voice. One last night before everything changed. The question hanging over that upper room, though none of them could have put it into words, was simply this: would love be enough? The room had been prepared ahead of time, at Jesus' instruction. He had sent Peter and John into the city with careful directions. Follow a man carrying a jar of water, he told them, which was unusual enough to notice, since that was women's work, and they had found the house, and the owner had shown them a large upper room, furnished and ready. Someone had laid out the low tables, cushions on the floor, oil lamps throwing amber light against the plastered walls. The smell of roasting lamb and bitter herbs already rising through the house. They came in from the streets of Jerusalem, 12 disciples, dusty-footed, their sandals worn from weeks of travel. And Jesus came with them. He reclined at the table. He looked around at their faces. These were not remarkable men by the world's measure. Fishermen, a tax collector, men with rough hands and complicated pasts. But he loved them. Deeply, specifically, the way you love people you have eaten 1,000 meals with and argued with and laughed with in the dark. But something was already wrong. John records it plainly. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, to betray him. 30 pieces of silver, already agreed upon, already exchanged. And Judas was sitting there at the table, eating the same food, breathing the same air, within arm's reach of the man he had sold. Jesus knew. And then he did something no one expected. He rose from the table. He took off his outer robe. He tied a towel around his waist like a servant. He poured water into a basin, the sound of it ordinary, almost gentle, and he began to wash his disciples' feet. One by one, the dust of the road, the calluses, the weariness of walking. When he got to Simon Peter, Peter pulled back. "Lord," he said, "are you going to wash my feet?" There was protest in his voice, something almost like offense. A teacher did not do this. A rabbi did not kneel at his students' feet. This was wrong in every direction that his understanding ran. Jesus said, "You don't understand what I'm doing now, but you will understand later." Peter still resisted. "You will never wash my feet." And Jesus said, quietly but with an edge like certainty, "If I don't wash you, you have no part with me." Peter, who was nothing if not wholehearted, swung the other direction immediately. "Then not just my feet, Lord, my hands and my head too." And Jesus smiled. You can almost hear it in the language, and said, "The one who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. The rest of him is clean." He went through all 12, even Judas, even the man with 30 silver pieces in his memory and a plan to slip away before the night was over. Jesus knelt before him, took his feet, washed them with water, and dried them with the towel. That is almost too much to sit with. He put his robe back on and returned to his place. The room had gone quiet in a different way now, not peaceful exactly, but weighted, like the air before a storm. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right. But if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet." Then he said something that made the room go cold. "One of you will betray me. Someone sitting with me at this very table." They looked at each other, slowly, searching. John was reclining right next to Jesus, close enough that Peter caught his eye and nodded. "Ask him who it is." And John leaned back and whispered, "Lord, who is it?" Jesus said, "It's the one I will give this piece of bread to when I dip it." He dipped the bread. He handed it to Judas. And the text says, with one of the most chilling short sentences in all of Scripture, as soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. Jesus looked at him. "What you are about to do it quickly." And Judas went out into the night. The others didn't understand. They thought maybe he was going to buy something for the feast. Then, and this is the turning, Jesus took the bread. He gave thanks. He broke it. And he said, "This is my body, given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." He took the cup of wine. He passed it around the table. "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." There was a hush over the room that had nothing to do with silence. These 12 men, who had seen healings and storms calmed and a man walk out of a tomb, they were sitting inside something they couldn't yet understand, something that would take years, decades, lifetimes to begin to fathom. He was not just giving them a meal. He was giving them a way to carry him with them into every century, every country, every broken and hopeful moment that would come after. And then he talked to them, long and tenderly, in the way of someone who knows the goodbye is coming and wants to say everything important before the door closes. "Don't let your hearts be troubled," he told them. "Believe in God. Believe also in me." There is something about this meal that refuses to stay in the past. Every candle, every cup, every table set for the breaking of bread carries a faint echo of that upper room. The act of eating together, this ordinary, daily, unremarkable human thing, was the thing Jesus chose. Not a monument, not a proclamation in the streets. A meal. He chose 12 imperfect men. He washed the feet of the one who would betray him. He passed bread around a table knowing what the night would cost. And in doing so, he showed what love actually looks like when it is not a feeling but a choice. Not a warmth that comes easily, but a decision made in full view of the darkness and made anyway. There is no record of what the room felt like after he finished speaking, whether they sat in silence, or someone wept, or the lamps flickered. But there they were, a teacher and 12 ordinary men, sharing the last meal of an ordinary Thursday, on the edge of the most extraordinary thing the world had ever seen. And somewhere in the city, the night was already moving.